Alright, this is my Arty Build guide. It is a wisdom-based Arty. It's not an intel-based. I train tier 5 falconry. So let's get some questions out of the way. Why wisdom? On my repeater setup, my wisdom and intel come to about the same. What benefits does wisdom give me? It gives me a great trance. It allows me to be pretty effective with bird strikes. And it allows me to also take tier 5 from falconry and get the excess hit points when I'm soloing. I switched to this build from thrower because repeaters are really freaking good right now. The damage that this build does is greater or equal to my thrower. I would say it's actually pretty far ahead of my thrower at this point. I am still in testing phases on this build. I'm making changes, seems like every other day, and this is one of the only builds I'm going to keep updated on this channel. Meaning if I change a piece of gear, or if I change a destiny or enhancement setup, I'm going to make a video right away on it and post it. As long as it's not something too small. I'm not going to post, you know, an augment swap or anything like that. But once I have enough changes, yeah, I'll keep this video, this build updated on this channel video-wise. This will be version 1. Alright. I went Warforged pure. So why Warforged pure? Warforged for a ton of PRR and MRR. I'm wearing heavy armor. Pure for all of the buffs. And full-on rage utility. And that's another thing that I like about this build over my thrower. Thrower was just a powerhouse. This thing's a powerhouse with raid utility. I can heal tanks. I can self-heal. I am not at a 55 MRR cap. Because of these things, it is a lot more fun to raid on this build. It doesn't pull quite as much raid boss aggro, though it's still pretty high up on the list, even with all the negative threat I have. But it does not do as much imbue damage as my thrower, so it does not pull raid boss aggro. My thrower, it will pull raid boss aggro no matter what I do. The high PRR and MRR on this thing allows me to swap the tank variants of this build. I have setups on the left-hand corner of my screen that allow me to hit pretty high PRR. This is outside of Reaper, keep in mind. And pretty high spell power. Something to note is, yes, you use rune arms, but you don't do enough damage to have it worth the trouble. What you do get from rune arms is spell power. So when all of these runes are lit up, you get quite a bit of extra spell power. As they charge up, you will get more. That being said, this class does require you to have everything from spell power to range power to imbue dice to sneak dice. It is hard to fit everything you need on this build, so gearing certain ways is kind of troublesome for me. And I don't foresee myself updating to any new gear in the future. At least not at this time. I'm looking at a few pieces, but as far as switching my entire gear set over to Mr. Draenor gear, I don't think it's happening on this build. It will be happening on my thrower, and I will probably update my thrower the next time I run my thrower. But I'm pretty content with what my gear setup is on this thrower. So let's start with enhancements. Of course, this is best if you are racial completionist. I will explain how to build this if you are not racial completionist. I trained 19 in the Warforged. I grabbed weapon enchantment, attachment, PRR, melee and ranged power, PRR, any hit points I can safely grab. And this is the one variant. Since I solo, I usually keep myself in Mechanist. I'm Warforged. I am not easy to heal. In raids, I usually worry about my own hit points. And in Reapers, well, I tend to solo more than I run with groups. But I don't usually worry about healers healing me on the setup. Now, if I was doing a raid push, of course, you're going to want to switch this stuff up. You're going to want to switch a lot of the stuff on the build. Put 31 into Battle Engineer. Endless Fusillade, trained the left side. Got the imbue dice. Imbue dice is very important, and you're using this imbue. A lot of split builds you see are running the rogue imbue. The rogue imbue is better. Yep, it is. The action boost power and extra action boost, pretty important from this side, along with your weapon stuff. This gives you the spell power and stuff when you charge your rune arm. This I keep pretty simplified. When I go more in a raid push mode, you'll see me train to the higher tiers. You do lose 1 threat range by not going on this tier, which is not a huge deal. If it's a crit multiplier, would be a huge deal. Threat range, not a huge deal. I put 41 in falconry and train Master Falconer. And if I wanted to go the rogue imbue, you can easily go 18 Arty to rogue. You could even not take adamantium body and run invasion on this build. But I chose not to do that. This tree here, Renegade Mastermaker, is not important. You don't have to have this on the build at all to make it effective. I run it for tight pinches. This converter allows me to throw it on anybody and heal them. The reason I took this was A, for 2 manning, comes in pretty handy for throwing people heals in a pinch, and B, for saving raids. I've ran a lot of raids where all the healers die except for the tank, and there's nobody to heal the tank. Well, with this you could keep the tank up, and I have done it plenty since running this build. I have saved a lot of raids, and a lot of tanks, and a lot of fails with Converter. That's why I run this. If you are starved for racial points, you don't have to run this. Put it in the Warforged tree, grab as much as you can. If you don't solo, do not take Mechanist. Take Healer's Friend. It's essential to keep yourself alive, because if you are running R10s with a decent healer, they will be able to keep you alive a lot better than you'll be able to keep yourself alive. That's just the way it goes. If I didn't train this, if you are racial capped, racial completed, and I didn't want to train this, I would grab more DPS somewhere. I'd probably train Harper Agent, get ranged power, get a little bit of extra hit points, probably go up this tree a little bit here. That pretty much ends this on any enhancements at the moment. Going into destinies, the destiny tree is simple. I have 83 total destiny points. I'm pretty sure that's the max, or maybe one off. Pretty sure it's max. 35 in Shirati. I don't take Watchful Eye feat. I do on my thrower, not on my artificer. So yes, you do lose 5 double shot by not taking that. Can you take it? Yeah, probably can fit it somewhere on the build. You'll have to sacrifice something, which I'll get into later. I use Stay Loud, and I'll get into the reason why in a bit, but this is sonic damage. And I grab any imbue dice, spell power I can possibly get my hands on. Okay. I go for the tier 5s here. And since our lovely update, you can now take point blank shot at any range. That's really nice to have. And it gives you spell power too. Whenever you train a pure archer and you're not using the rogue imbue and such, you have to keep an eye on your spell power, and you got to keep it as high as possible. In Reapers, I usually sit about 700 electric, and yeah, about the same on repair. That is essential for your DPS. It makes a huge difference. In any move I make, gear-wise, enhancement-wise, I'm always kind of watching for both range power, imbue, and spell power. I train Fate Singer. You can get all 4 cores now these days. 23 in Fate Singer. Again, spell power. Threat, spell power. Positive is important on this build too if you use bottles, which I do. Pluck of the String. And this is going to be where I get into attacks. I released a Arty Build back in January. It was a simple test build. I think it was only 4 minutes long. And the build was okay. The reason I did stay on Arty, and Arty did good damage back then too. It wasn't bad back then. But for soloing, like I do, it did not have the crit power to deal with dooms and red names, like it does now. Meaning, if I ran into a doom, I just could not drop it effectively enough before in order to solo everything I liked to solo. The reason is up until recently, Hunt's End, when you hit it, only worked with 1 shot, 1 bolt. You shoot 4 bolts, only worked with 1 bolt. And your bolts usually aren't going to be double shot, which I'll get into in a second. So I'm using a single bolt hitting Hunt's End. It's not going to do much at all. I would probably argue that back then it would have been more prudent to run a different Epic Destiny than Shirati. However, I never tested any of that. Now these days, it works on all 4 bolts. And whenever you look at changing an attack or adding an attack into your rotation, you have to make sure it works on all 4 bolts, because not everything does. Keep that in mind. I was running Shadow Dancer when I first got on this build, and I realized the Shadow Strike only worked on 1 bolt, which sucked. So I switched to Fate Singer, and the Pluck of the Strings is a huge boost in damage. It works on all 4 bolts, does a ton of freaking sonic damage, and debuffs sonic, and that's where Stay Loud comes into play. So you can do an extra 30% damage sonic-wise, and Stay Loud will do quite a bit of damage, all said and done. I trained up this tree once the level cap increased, and grabbed immunity to charisma stat damage. Now, that's not that important if you don't have the Epic Destiny points that I have. However, if you do a lot of soloing, this is really nice to have, especially in Dread at this point. And then last but not least, Legendary Dreadnought, and this is kind of important for this build. You want to grab extra action boosts, because fusillade, endless fusillade, is your bread and butter. You can also, well, think about this too. When you are action boosting, which you are action boosting pretty much every fight, you're also getting +3 to your stats. This gives ghost touch and imbue dice. You take this for the imbue dice, not the ghost touch, for the most part. And this also gives you 10% action bonus to attack speed, which helps when you take patience. Patience lowers 10% of your attack speed. Doesn't really affect Arty at all. You also get a ton of PRR, hit points, healing amp, which is kind of important on this build, because even with 172 healing amp, I am hard to heal. And that's just about it on this. I don't foresee any of this changing in the near future. I'm pretty content with everything that you see here. And even though I've looked this up and down quite a bit, I highly doubt I'm going to change anything on this thing anytime soon. Reaper points. Let's go over these real quick. So of course, you're going to want to take your main stat. If you're not capped, take your 21, get your hit points. That's essential. Get your PRR. This build doesn't use Intel to reflex, so the saves can be lackluster if you are lower on the past life list. You're going to want to take as much reflex as possible. I'm just barely cutting it in R10s. I don't fail traps, but if I was any lower, I probably would start. Dire Thaumaturge is very important on this build for DPS, and so is the Dread Adversary. Dread Adversary, you're going to want to take the Reaper boost, Reaper Strike boost, and train up the range power. That's very important. The rest of it, I could care less. This though, take all the wisdom that you can, and all the spell power. And the spell points are kind of nice too. And that's pretty much it on Reaper points. I will list all feats in the description down below, and I'll put it as a comment. And this is very important that you listen to what I say. Artificer uses class feats. You have to start with 12 base decks. Don't try to start with less. You don't need any more. Start at 12 base. Why? Because you need 19 in order to take improved precision shot. If you don't have 19, you're not going to be able to take it. So you need at least 7 plus 7 to feats. Plus 7 tome. And I was able to take this at level 20 as a bonus feat. I will put my bonus feats in the descriptions below. If you mess those feats up or take things differently, you'll probably have to lesser TR. You will not be able to make the build the way I do. Once you pick your bonus feats, I'll show you. I was just looking at this a minute ago. Fred does not allow you to change them. So if you miss something, or you mess something up on this build, unfortunately, you have to go ahead and use a lesser TR. And yes, I have had the lesser TR on this setup. You don't have to worry about your fortification. I'm at 285. My PRR is about 340 to 350 in Reapers, depending on how I buff. And my MRR gets me by. Let's talk about the actual repeater weapon. Only has a 33% chance to double shot. It's not a 100% chance. So if you have 100% double shot. You will only double shot once every 3 bolts. So, when it comes to the watchful eye feat, adding 5 double shot to your build is like adding 1.5 double shot. Now, would you take a feat to gain 1.5 double shot? Most of you would probably say no. And I said no too. Double shot is not important on this build. It is, and it isn't. Having a high amount of double shot can boost your DPS, but seeing as the majority of your bolts are going to be without double shotted, it is not essential that you have a crazy amount of double shot. Fully buffed, I am right at 100, slightly over 100 with my Reaper Strike. And I have my 1 and 3 bolts hitting a double shot. Can I get higher? Yeah, I could hit about 110 with a slightly different gear set, and I will sacrifice something else in order to do that. With the new Myths of Draenor stuff, that is an option for me that I'm looking into. I'm going to wait till after the raid comes out to change any gear on this thing whatsoever. Let's talk about gear. My gear set is a 3-piece Sora Kells, Wind Lasher, Volker's Might with the gem. I'm using 5-piece Dino for my Profane set bonuses, Dread Repeater, and Dinosaur Bone Rune Arm. I'm going to go through each one of these pieces of gear, explain what I did to it, and what augments. And we'll keep this pretty simple. I run the Perfect Silence set. My first augment goes into my goggles, along with the tokens of damage. Legendary Tinker's Goggles, I believe those drop from MA. The Quality Deceptions and Intel come in handy. My Teresa's Perfect Sight is part of my Sora Kel set. Now keep in mind, I love this set bonus on this particular build. I'm a player of efficiency, and I love anything that gets you a lot of bang for your buck. Right. This gives you your plus 14 wisdom. Gives you your 3-piece Sora Kel set. And that 3-piece Sora Kel set gives you 6 different artifact bonuses. Actually more if you count all the ability scores. It gives you plus 3 artifact ability to all ability scores. So it's more. And that is a major issue I have with a lot of other gear sets. I don't know of any other gear set that you could run a 3-piece and get all of that. It is extremely efficient. It's a great gear set. So yes, I'm running the 3-piece. I'm running the ring. Let's go with the augments here. Running range power here, and repair amplification helps. The ring, I'm running Undying Sapphire and Draconic Soul Gem. Another thing about this gear set is because there are so many set pieces, you have a lot of augment slots. You're not trying to run 3-piece augment sets everywhere. And then menus Iron Fists, Book of Legendary Recipes, Diamond of Insightful Decks. And that'll give you a 3-piece along with physical sheltering, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go to my necklace, Dino Bone Necklace. This is dealer's choice. I do have wisdom slotted because it gives you plus 15 wisdom. You don't have to have the necklace. You can run a different necklace. There are other options out there. You can run a Dino Belt. Doesn't have to be a necklace, but this is what I chose. Fang slot, sneak attack bonus. Claw, there's nothing I could put claw on it that it will be any benefit to me. So, I left it empty. And then armor piercing. You want armor piercing of some sort on your build, especially these days with Smith Dranor. Diamond of Festive Wisdom, Diamond of Wisdom, Insightful Wisdom, and Diamond of Dex. Why Dexterity? Well, you're going to want some help with your saves. Reflex. My gem is a craftable gem, Insightful Seeker, Constitution, Healing App. I put my Essence of Dark Diversion that drops from the Dreadburn raid, whatever that raid is in Thunder Peaks. You're going to want to have a decent amount of negative threat reduction. I personally have this pot, just in case. Oop, is that the wrong one? I have this pot here. No, that was the right one. I have all the pots, I promise you guys. But I do have the negative threat pot. I don't have to use it. I don't usually pull aggro, and if I do pull aggro, the pot won't help. However, if you don't hit a certain amount of negative threat, yeah, you're going to end up pulling aggro. Especially if you have high imbue. So, highly recommend getting Dark Diversion. When it comes to this gem, it can be tricky getting a perfect gem. A suggestion I can make to you all is to just focus on the Wind Lasher at first. Get your Wind Lasher set bonus. The Volker's Might is not a huge increase. Also, if you don't have Dark Diversion, you might not want to run Volker's Might, because that does give a little bit to threat generation. I run a mix of capes. Silver Dragon Capelet, Insightful Intelligence. I will get into why I have so much intelligence on my build, or why I run all the intelligence I can on this build in a little bit. I love this cloak. I don't foresee myself changing this cloak anytime soon. It really makes the build come together. This is my primary cloak, Emerald of Arcane Empowerment and Perfect Silence. This is my second set augment piece. The Shining Silver Scales are awesome. Gives you cold absorption. A lot of things use cold spells. Famines, polar rays. There's a lot of stuff that'll hit you with cold spells. This makes you extremely tanky to a lot of cold stuff. The other cloaks I use are my mantles. If you're running ranged, well, as you know, on my thrower, I primarily run jeweled cloak because you need spell absorb on low MRR cap ranged. You'll get one shot otherwise. All it takes is one dot or a nice place pull array and you're done. On this build, I don't have to worry about that. I do still swap to this. This technically has better damage because it gives me a sneak attack dice. So, I'm trying to get that on my other gear, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get lucky one of these days. My curses are crap. This belt. This belt's my weakest piece of gear. I can switch this with anything from Dreadnought. I could switch my necklace out. I could put a dino belt on. I could put a different necklace on. That might be something I do in the future. I'd have to get a nice boost for it. I haven't bothered. It does give nice potency to all stuff, which is important because you want a lot of different spell powers. The green augments greater heroism. Colorless augments spellcraft 19. Helps with your spell power, which you want. Besides that, this belt is basically useless. It is my weakest piece of gear on this build. The claw piece, 5% quality bonuses, it's useless. You don't have to put any of that. You're just wasting your mats. My second ring is Legendary Band of Insightful Commands, and that's my third Perfect Silence feat, or an augment slot. It's a nice ring, gives a lot of quality stuff to it. Insightful Accuracy, Quality Deadly. It's hard for me to switch off of this ring. Maybe I will one of these days. I'm looking at Mythdraenor options, and they involve me getting rid of this ring and not replacing some of this stuff. So, like I said, I am still kind of holding on to this gear set until the raid comes out. Dustless Boots, Topaz of Quick Movements. Now that is very important. Topaz of Quick Movements is a augment that drops from heroic Fae, not legendary. It is a pretty easy farm. Just find a few rares, re-roll the chests a couple times, or just run enough rares, and you'll eventually run it into it pretty quickly. And that gives quick draw. Very important on an Arty. You're going to want that. If you don't have it, it's going to affect you quite a bit. Bracers of Claw, Insightful Constitution, Parrying, False Life. Not really much to get into on this. The Volker's Might, when you have everything you need negative threat wise, it's a nice little, emphasis on little, boost. It's not going to make or break the build. If you don't have that build and you can't get a perfect gem, relax, be patient. It's not going to ruin the build. My Docent, it's Dino Bone Docent. Another piece of gear I'm looking to switch. It's the nice thing about the Dread set is everything except for spell DCs is very important to this set. 15 melee power, profane, 15 universal spell power. That's nice, you need that. 30 profane bonus to physical rating. Plus 2 profane to all ability scores, plus 4 to attack and damage. Another nice thing about the Mythdraenor set is you get plus 4 now to ability scores. So, yeah, I'm going to be looking into that in the near future here, and I will update you guys as soon as I have that changed. Rune arms are nice. Why Dino Bone Rune Arm? I will continue using Dino Bone Rune Arm long after my Dread set gets replaced, right? Which might be soon. Why? Because you can put 2d6 sneak dice on your Rune Arm. Skill slot. Armor. I'm sorry. Is it? Fang slot. Armor. That helps a lot. Simple as that. In the future, I might replace this with the Red Dragon armor to get Dripping with Magma. Dripping with Magma is not a deal breaker on this build, but it is a nice damage boost, you know. It's not going to really knock my socks off, but it would be a nice damage boost to have Dripping with Magma on this setup. However, I'd much rather have my current setup than run that, than not run this. I put Topaz of Feather Falling on my Docent, Sapphire of Accuracy. You can see my Isle of Dread stuff. Horn of Relentless Furies on it. It's important. It's nice. Fortification, you don't need it. You lose 4. You gain it with the bracers. Whatever you want to do. Only claw slot I really have filled out. Repair damage. It's nice. Helps. I recommend setting up some self-heal stuff. Get as much spell power as you can to your repair and overall spell damage. Allows you to self-heal a lot better. I could swap this out, and I'm pretty tanky with this setup. 164 MRR, 323 PRR, and very self-sufficient. And I suggest making the tank setup. 360 PRR, 158 MRR, 190 MRR, 328 PRR. It's very nice. Though I don't tank raids, I can pull this out if I get in a pinch and self-heal my way through just about anything. Something I recommend is getting the PN raid weapon, Hallowed Splinters, and Conjure Radiant Bolt. It's returning. You don't have to worry about bolts when you do that. I just figured that out the other night. Thank you. Shout out to Venatori for giving me that idea. Why? You will go through a absolutely ridiculous amount of bolts. I went through 20,000 of these conjured bolts on my Ravenloft chain solo I just released a few days ago. Kept running out of bolts mid-fight. I'd spam this spell a bunch, and I'd still run out of bolts mid-fight. Very important to get this. I highly recommend getting Hallowed Splinters. Another thing, you're going to want some way to cast magic missile immunity. You could get this from Kind of a Big Deal. 25-minute shield clicky. You're going to want it because you're not taking Shadow Dancer if you follow my setup, and you don't get the magic missile immunity. If you plan on doing a bunch of solos, start stocking up on Dimension D-Door scrolls. Augments. I put the Legendary Arrow Bound Topaz, my double shot augment, and Topaz of Wizardry. You don't switch your rune arm very often. I almost never do. This is my permanent gear here. And you want as much spell points as possible. If you run like I do, you will go through your spell points, self-healing or healing others. I have 3,000 spell points. I would love to have 4,000, but we can't have everything. My repeater, times 4 crit multi. It's very nice. 200 base damage, fully buffed. What did I put on this? I put... The debuff I put was vulnerability. Why vulnerability? Affects magic damage and physical damage. What do you have that's magical damage? You have your imbue. That comes into play a lot. There's not a whole lot of stuff that is immune to electrical. There's some stuff. But unlike poison, which is the rogue imbue, a lot of stuff is immune to rogue. Guy's bothering me for my build. Shout out Cleo, he just got his wings. Congratulations. Let's get into filigries. There's probably better ways to do this. This is my setup. It's eerily similar to my thrower setup. Actually, it might be about the same. I believe I put 5-piece crack shot negotiator. Let's see, 2-piece long piece. Spines, I believe I have 3-piece of this. Dread, I have 4-piece. Let's check out my necklace here just to make sure I'm telling you guys the right information. Yep, spines, crack shot. There's 4-piece. Spines, I think spines I am running 3-piece. Yes, I'm running a 3-piece spines. 1, 2, 3, 4-piece spines. Gives me my range power. New artifact from Mithranor. I'll probably add another long shadow. It'll give me my +2 imbue. And I'll get more into that imbue in just a sec. This setup maxes out range power. On repeater, I don't necessarily focus on imbue damage very much. Why? Imbue damage pulls aggro, and even as I currently am, I am constantly pulling aggro on this thing. I limit myself imbue-wise to a certain extent. I'm not trying to go absolutely crazy on it. I shot for 14, and I think I'm at 15 now. Let's double check this. General. Sneaks at 11. Imbue dice is at 15. And I could ramp this up or down slightly, depending on buffs and setups, but I'm very happy with 15. Why don't I shoot higher? Aim for stars of 20, 21. I know some people have 20 plus imbue on their Arty. That's fine. They're going to pull aggro like crazy. That's one thing I was having issues with on my thrower, is even with minus 150 threat, I was still pulling aggro right off the tank no matter how hard they were intiming. With this setup, it is low enough to not pull aggro, and high enough to do very effective damage. So I am not trying to get higher than 15. You want 14 imbue because it does affect some of your Epic Destiny stuff. For every 7 bonus imbue dice, 1d77 damage at the bottom of Stay Loud. I got 2 of them. I'm happy with 2 of them. Not trying to increase. Fortification bypass 78 with bird strikes from falconry. And I'll go over the falconry tree more. I really didn't get into this very much. My bad. You are easily hitting 150 if you total everything up with precision and all that. Falconry. Why did I train so much in falconry? Simple. I wanted to get the 25 competitive bonus, and the bird strikes are awesome. They work on all 4 bolts. Falconry is very important. You can train wisdom through it, get extra range power, and the capstone is that great, but it isn't horrible. If you don't have the curse like I do, you also can get true seeing, and deadly instincts is great on a wisdom build. I run minus 85% range. Now I have the potion. I can get into the hundreds. I don't need to. I am usually in the top 3 ranged. I'm usually in the top 3 range on aggro in every raid. Meaning if the tank dies, a lot of the times I'll be the next person to grab aggro. Why is that? Well, I do a crap ton of damage on the setup. Simple as that. I can get higher, but I found that this is pretty much the sweet spot. Can switch quivers at minus 100. Sometimes I do, depending on the tank. Usually when I run with my guildies and an experienced tank, I don't have to worry about it. But if you miss your Tim quite a bit, well, I will end up tanking them. With 85, though, I very rarely pull aggro. Very rarely at this point. Usually it'll be the throwers and stuff in my guild or some of my thrower friends that will end up pulling aggro before I do. That's why I say I'm usually top 3. Helpless damage is 75%. It's important. You want to get some. That's why I take Crush Weakness. That damage you get from Time Stop is very important. Besides that, it's basically it on that stuff there. some future changes I'm going to make. I'll be looking at the Mr. Draenor sets, of course. That's a no-brainer. The Dread set is not an efficient is not a overly efficient set. It's a 1-to-1 ratio on bonuses, basically. So for it's 5-piece set. I get 5 useful bonuses. You get 6 bonuses in total. All right. Well, you can do that same thing with the Myth of Draenor set. The problem I have with Myth of Draenor is you have to fight between solar and moon. But if I get the right amount of moon gear on here, and yes, I have been looking, I did come up with multiple gear sets. None of them that were impressed me enough to make me switch. We'll see what happens with the raid. If I like the raid, yeah, I have a few great ideas I can switch to. But besides that, I'm probably going to keep what I have for the foreseeable future. I will update you guys if that changes. One other thing, Epic Purifying Quiver, burning ammunition, 1d8 damage. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're shooting, I don't know how many bolts per second. Let's just assume with endless fuselage I'm shooting like 10 bolts a second or something like that. Yeah, that adds up quite a bit. The blunted weapon damage is good also. Trying to think. I think I'm all set here. I think I've pretty much gone through everything. If you guys have questions, feel free to post them in the comments below. Sorry, this took a little bit longer than most of my videos. I'm trying to be extremely thorough. You all take care.